Hey gang, welcome to another episode of My Tripod is Lopsided and I Don't Know How to Fix It. I posted a poll on my community page asking you to decide on my next video, and you guys chose for me to make a video for Pride Month, specifically around being aromantic-asexual. But I like to give my subscribers what they want. Also, after gaining my following from talking about straight people being weird and anti-feminist and a song a trans woman wrote, I've collected I've garnered an audience of queer people. I've also inadvertently came out as aromantic-asexual. And I'm really happy that I have like-minded individuals sub to me. Obviously you're like-minded or else you wouldn't be subscribed to me, but I think you understand what I'm saying. I did have a few gay people commenting that I was ruining their community. Another saying I was straight with extra steps. Love that for me. I did have some nice comments about it, which is what actually matters here. I've been working on scripting this video on and off since I had exams, and as I'm scripting it, it's not over, but as I'm filming this, it would be. Getting meta on myself, I guess. And yes, they are over, and I am a shell of a woman. I was gonna be saving this for a different video, but I want to say it now just because I have the chance to. I have an important update on my video about Dylan Mulvaney's song. I made that video talking about her song, and I don't want people to assume I'm supporting her, especially with her ongoing silence about Palestine and the Congo. A lot of people call Dylan misogynistic due to her playing out stereotypes of a woman and then really bringing that point home since she released her song, and I just wanted to talk about that. I don't see an overarching issue with her being hyper-feminine and ditzy. It's not my thing, but it's what she likes, even though I don't want people to think that feminine means dumb or feminine means ditzy, even though that's kind of her perception of it, so I understand where they're kind of coming from with that, which I kind of talked about in my video. A lot of people don't like that she calls herself a girl, but grown cis women call themselves girls all the time, and most people don't really have an issue with it. Anything else is really just an assumption based on your perception of her videos, if that makes sense. I'm not going to say that these women are wrong for feeling this way. You can have your opinion. I don't appreciate a lot of the comments I got. I just love when my fellow women call me a dumb bitch. It's great. People are saying I'm the reason why women aren't taken seriously and why women are still being treated horribly, so I didn't know I had that much influence. I also got a lot of comments asking, what are they teaching in school nowadays? As if I'm still in school. I am, but that's besides the point. I'm not sure how old they think I am. I'm a legal adult. I pay taxes. And if you're asking what are they teaching in school nowadays, how about I tell you? I've learned about ideologies, modern liberalism, communism, neoconservatism, that kind of thing. Learned about how our political system works as well as America's, and I've learned about illiberal behaviors such as residential schools, which I started learning about in grade 3. I've learned about economic systems, the Cold War, the war in Afghanistan, Vietnam, the rise of communism in the Soviet Union, the rise of fascism in Germany. I've also learned about propaganda, kind of like what you've been told, like how they're told that they're teaching kids to be gay, how they're putting litter boxes in bathrooms, how they're teaching boys that they suck and white people that they're causing all the problems in the world. All things to make you want to homeschool your kids. That way you have control over what they're learning, right? And then they have a narrower view of the world and are more likely to vote conservative so that the people who created that propaganda can keep their jobs. In my Lily Kate video, I do say some things that I'm sure could have some clarification, but I need to tell myself that it is not my job to hold my audience's hand through the entire thing so that they don't misinterpret things that I've said. And if I'm gonna do this whole YouTube thing like I've wanted to do for 12 years, I'm gonna have to deal with it. If someone goes into my video with a preconceived notion about me or the topic, my video isn't going to change their mind, and it's not my responsibility to change their mind. When you're so used to being misunderstood your entire life, so when you get misunderstood online and then get insulted for it, like a trigger goes off in your brain. Which is kind of why I filter the heck through my comments. Simply because I don't want people to call me a name and then a bunch of people like the comment and agree with it. It hurts my fragile feelings. Trying to work on growing a thicker skin. Gross. And to finish things off, I am not a liberal. The US political spectrum is really weird. You have two sides, left which is liberal, right which is conservative, when in reality it's more like this. and you guys are here. I won't say where I am because it really doesn't matter, and you can probably infer. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start this video, shall we? To avoid this video getting blocked or some people thinking this video is very different than what it actually is, this word is going to be replaced with snails. The word on screen is going to be replaced with prawn. Snails is usually replaced with snacks, but I'm using snails because I think it's kind of funny. And also, sometimes I'll replace the word and sometimes I won't, just so you know. I'm going to do a brief summary on what it means to be aromantic-asexual in case a few people clicked on this wanting to learn more. And I'm not an expert in all the different identities, micro-labels under it, but I will try my best. Aromantic-asexual can be two separate identities or they can be one, where most people put that under Aro-Ace and use this flag instead of the two separate ones. If you're kind of like me, you kind of just use all three. I'll get to that a little bit later, but mostly it's just because I just do. Aromantic is defined as a person whose romantic orientation is aromanticism. Well, that is very helpful. Appreciate that definition, Google. Is categorized as people who experience little to no romantic attraction. Aromanticism is different for everyone and is used as sort of an umbrella term for a lot of micro-labels. An opinion on micro-labels differs from person to person, as has been slightly debated throughout the community, but I believe we've come to a consensus that micro-labels are okay. Asexual is similar to aromantic, defined as someone who experiences little to no sexual attraction. This is also an umbrella term for a lot of micro-labels and even a spectrum, just like aromantic. Asexuality is also different for everyone. You can be asexual without being aromantic, and you can be aromantic without being asexual. These are separate because romantic attraction and sexual attraction are two different things, and some people like me are both. There are a lot of people who believe that I just haven't met the right person yet, and I've also had a guy offer to fix it for me. Not how that works. Some people think that it's an unhealthy bodily dysfunction or a low snail's drive. You can be asexual and have a snail's drive. Some asexuals have hypersexuality. Arousal and desire have nothing to do with sexual attraction. Looking at someone and thinking they're hot and having the desire to have sex with them is sexual attraction.
When you're asexual and experience libido, arousal, there is usually a disconnect between people, you and that experience. It's more of a bodily function without the mental aspect sometimes, and some people have sexual fantasies that don't have to do with themselves asexual. It is different for everyone, and this video is not meant to be all-encompassing.
Asexuality is a lot more nuanced and complicated, and some asexuals may still have sex with their partners and enjoy it. Others are completely indifferent to it. Some asexuals are snails repulsed. All are valid. It is called snails favorable, snails indifferent, or snails repulsed. Aromantic is similar. I feel like aromanticism is treated weirdly in our community, and when describing our orientation, I feel a lot of aromantic asexuals only say that they're asexual because they don't want to explain aromantic, and most people just know what asexuality is. You can be aromantic and be in a romantic relationship if you're romance favorable or romance indifferent, and a lot of aromantics are not in romantic relationships because they are aromantic, which is similar to asexual. Romance favorable, romance indifferent, and romance repulsed. People who are one or the other still have relationships, and some aromantic people experience sexual attraction, and some asexual people experience romantic attraction. You're not always both, which explains kind of the two separate flags in this scenario. I think using the saying some asexuals still have snails or some aromantics still have romantic relationships, while used first to kind of bust myths, I feel like now is used as a crutch for alloromantic and allosexual people to be more comfortable with someone's asexuality and aromanticism. Yes, some asexual people still have snails, and yes, some aromantic people still have romantic partners. But in all honesty, it's kind of a smaller amount of people. I think more often than not, we don't. There's a lot of people who think aromanticism and asexuality is fake. Like you just haven't met the right person, or you're still young and you'll find someone eventually. You're a late bloomer. Would you say that to a straight person? Would you? Sexual and romantic orientation is based on your past. You wouldn't say that you are bisexual because you might be attracted to someone of the same sex. You say that you're straight because you've only ever been attracted to the opposite sex. You might later realize that you're bisexual, but unless something or someone comes up that makes you question things, you're pretty solid with your identity. It's the same thing with aromantic and asexual people. If someone identifies as aromantic asexual and later falls for someone, that doesn't invalidate their entire identity, they just don't fit that label anymore. But sometimes they still do. There are some people, I will say, who are attracted to one person and they've never been attracted to anyone else. I think this kind of falls under gray romantic or gray sexual. Think Sasaki from Sasaki and Miyano. He's only ever been attracted to Miyano. He doesn't care that Miyano is a guy, he just likes Miyano. Miyano-sexual, if you will. Asexuality can be traced back to the 1800s, but it wasn't super popularized until it started being considered a mental health condition called inhibited sexual desire, then later changed to hypoactive sexual desire disorder to make it easier to say, I guess. Asexuals, like I mentioned before, can still have sexual desire. A lot of us don't, but asexuality is about attraction more than anything else. Asexuality is a sexual orientation, even though some researchers are still slightly skeptical and think that it is a mental health condition. Honestly, if you aren't aromantic or asexual, I don't feel like you should have a say.
Popping in again with the dumb robot voice. I'm specifically saying people who aren't Aro-Ace shouldn't have an opinion on what being Aro-Ace is, or the Aro-Ace experience, since they don't know what it's like. If you're talking about HSDD, professionals in that disorder obviously have a say since they are trained and educated. However, one does not have the right to say people who are Aro-Ace must have this condition. It is disrespectful and is reminiscent of homosexuality being considered a mental illness. I don't know much about HSDD, but I can say it isn't at all like the Aro-Ace experience. I'm sure they can coincide, as straight, bi, and homosexual people can have HSDD. HSDD apparently can improve after treatment, but being Aro-Ace is not something that can be treated, and assuming Aro-Ace people simply have an illness that can be fixed, rather than just having a different sexual, romantic orientation. This idea is extremely dangerous and can lead to a type of conversion therapy, especially if people who are Aro-Ace get diagnosed with HSDD even after saying they're simply Aro-Ace. Not separating the two can create stigma for both parties. HSDD is a sexual disorder. Aromantic is a romantic orientation. Asexual is a sexual orientation. Not understanding this can cause those diagnosed with HSDD to not get the treatment they need. Assuming being aromantic-asexual means that you must have HSDD or simply have an Aro-Ace disorder can force those people into treatment for their sexuality. This treatment will not work as intended, as again, it is not an illness. This can give an Aro-Ace person a lot of trauma and force them back into the closet. This is not curing them. They are now just afraid and ashamed to be themselves. This can also take away proper resources from people who actually have HSDD or any other sexual disorder. I wanted to explain further, as I didn't want people to assume I'm invalidating an entire disorder. I am simply saying aromantic-asexuals were considered ill and are still considered that way by a lot of doctors, which is dangerous and disrespectful to an entire sexuality. If you have HSDD, you are deserving of proper and safe treatment. If you are Aro-Ace, you are not ill, you just aren't straight. Sorry, let's get back to the video.
Asexuality has a lot of history to it, and the all-powerful source Wikipedia has an entire timeline. I feel like asexual men get made fun of more than asexual women. Women having no sexual desire can be seen as ideal, to be honest, to not to normal people, but you know. Guys, if you're making fun of a guy for not having any sexual desire or not being sexually attracted to people, I recommend you look within yourself and shut up. Aromantic, however, has a very small Wikipedia page and isn't as well documented as asexuality. And I think it is mostly because a lot of people don't have that separation in mind. You're romantically into that person, so that must mean you want to have snails with them. If you want to have snails with them, but you're not romantically attracted to them, that's fine, actually. A guy's got a screw who a guy's got a screw. Should I put that in? That's kind of crude, maybe. I wrote it in the script, I have to say it. I think aromantic is treated differently than asexual, as a lot of people see it as just like hookups and stuff. You know, there's lots of people who have hookups and one-night stands, or friends with benefits, but there's a difference between just not wanting to be in a romantic relationship and not really being able to. The Wikipedia page for aromantic is literally just like, here's what it means, here's some microlabels, and that's all we know about it. I also don't mind the microlabels here. I personally think that there's a few that I could fit under, and since there's more than one that I fit under, I just say aromantic, and I also don't want people to think that they have a chance. Alright, it's time to talk about me. I think my journey to self-discovery might be a bit different than a lot of other people with my same orientation. I know a lot of other people kind of had their chosen crush that they never really liked and just kind of like pretended they did, and they're just like, yeah, but they like, didn't really want anything to do with them. And a lot of times they never really liked or didn't understand the big deal about relationships. I was kind of the latter, but it's a little bit harder to explain. I sort of fixated on relationships and became the boy crazy one of the group. The hopeless romantic. I couldn't really figure out why I didn't like it for myself, why this thing that I was supposed to like and long for, especially as a girl, made me feel so grossed out. I remember the first time I had someone like me back. I use quotations because I don't think I ever actually liked them, especially after hearing how people describe what it's like having a crush with on which honestly just kind of sounds like an anxiety attack to me, but you know, you do you. I definitely haven't. I do have a definition of what kind of like a crush would be like for me, but I will get to that later on. I've been in relationships before, but every time it happens, my brain just kind of goes, ew, 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 or why do I hate this? It's like my brain is permanently stuck in ick mode. I genuinely like just hate being touched. And I hate compliments. I hate being perceived at or looked at in any way other than purely platonic. But honestly, the second I find out someone likes me, I'm usually okay with it. It does depend on the person. If they like me and actively try to pursue me, that's when it starts getting uncomfortable. But if someone likes me and they still treat me the same way they would as if we're friends, I'm usually okay with that. If they like me and know me enough, they would understand that I would, one, reject them, and two, be very uncomfortable. I also tend to hang around people I know wouldn't have feelings for me, whether they're a little bit older, also Aro-Ace, not attracted to women, or just wouldn't be into me. I just do that just to avoid any conflict in that regard. I've had people I thought I liked, but every interaction I have with them that could be seen as inherently romantic, my brain is flooded with ick, like I said earlier. Even if it's someone that I thought was the right person, someone I thought I liked in that manner. And within the few times I've told people I like them, I just get embarrassed and then move right on. It does not really affect me at all. When people actually experience that attraction and then hearing what it's like for them to be rejected, I dodged a bullet. I didn't start identifying as aromantic-asexual until this year, and you can see in one of my old videos that I hadn't quite figured myself out yet, and I had a few videos that I moved to private due to that reason, and it kind of makes me uncomfortable. I was told actually that I might be aromantic-asexual back in 2021. I was explaining how I was feeling, similar to what I just told you, to one of my friends, who then asked their very LGBTQ plus knowledgeable sibling, and they said, yeah, you might be aromantic. I also read Loveless by Alice Oseman. It was funny reading because I had light bulb after light bulb and still closed it and thought, what a good book. It's nice to see different perspectives. Like, girl, it is right there. It wasn't until I was in kind of an awful relationship with someone for a few weeks last June that I realized I needed to focus on how I was feeling. Stop pleasing people like me and to focus on what I want, how I feel, because for the longest time, I never did. How I was feeling was always pushed aside to make sure I didn't hurt the feelings of someone, even if that person used me to their advantage so that they could get what they wanted out of me. I knew how I felt about romantic and sexual relationships and attraction, and I needed to properly label my identity and stand my ground for once in my life. I think I had an aversion to calling myself aromantic-asexual because I'm still pretty young and I don't know, I have a crush on a YouTuber, and if he offered, I wouldn't say no. You will never find out who that is. But I realized I was basing my sexuality on hypotheticals. Hypothetically speaking, if the love of my life, Denji, was somehow magically in my presence, I would 100% agree to be with him. I would let Fukuzawa take care of me to his heart's content. Does I? Stupid. Like I said, with my hypothetical YouTuber crush that you will never find out who it is, I was holding myself back from identifying with a label that I fit because of hypothetical scenarios. You can't restrict your identity because of hypotheticals. I also think I struggled to come to terms with it due to how our society runs itself. The entire foundation of our culture is based on love, romance, snails, and partnerships. Our system is based on whether you're married or not. The way women are addressed is changed based on whether they're married or not. And the cure for the male loneliness epidemic is a romantic and sexual relationship with a woman. A person's inherent value is based on what they can provide for their future partner. People get married for financial benefit. The world is formed around partnership. That's where I get to the next part of this video. I think a way to describe being Aro-Ace in a lot of queer spaces is when your friend has their friend and they have all these inside jokes and they're like, oh, you just had to be there. And they're like, yeah, it was so fun. And you just have to like sit there like dying on the inside. That's kind of what being Aro-Ace feels like. But instead of an inside joke, it's snails and romance. Oh, you're Aro-Ace, you just don't get it. Where you'll find someone eventually and you'll know all about it then. Is that a threat? There's like this weird infantilization when it comes to Aro-Ace people where they're like, you're just so innocent, little bean, aw. First of all, not true. We know. You guys aren't slick. We know all about snails. We know all those stupid little games you guys play because you don't shut up about them. We're often usually either disgusted by it or we don't care or we also participate in it. Some of us do care and like it, but that's not the point. I've gotten offers from dudes asking me to let them show me that I'm not asexual, that they'll prove to me that it's good, completely disrespecting my wishes and my entire sexuality. And it's not uncommon for this to happen. Gay men, lesbians, aromantic and asexual people have all interacted with someone in the past who thought they had magical powers that could turn us straight, to the point where a lot of people have like a fetish for it. There is an aspect of modern feminism that involves female sexual liberation, the freedom to be sexual with whoever you want and not be shamed for it. I understand that, and I'm not shaming women who want that. If you want to have snails freely and with whoever you want, that's fine. But when so much of women's freedom and liberation comes back down to snails, it starts to feel like someone's fantasy again. Here is my trigger warning for you. Skip here if you don't want to hear this part, and here are the specific potential triggers. Give you a second. Okay, some of that has to do with prawn and prawn culture. I'm kind of against most prawn. I see what it turns people into, and I don't like it. I think prawn is damaging and affects how people view snails and intimacy, especially women, lesbians, and gay people. I know people will bring up, well, women watch prawn too, and it could give a weird perception of men. I know. That's why I kind of say everyone. Obviously not all of it, don't get on my case, please. Just kind of talking about certain ones. And this video is not about that aspect of it. It kind of creates a warped perception on how men are supposed to perform, how women are supposed to perform, the fact that it has to be a performance at all. Gay prawn is usually violent and lesbian prawn is often made for men. So much of it is gross and exploitative. Bringing this back to being Aro-Ace, I think people see this and think they can turn you, unleash your true nature like seen in a lot of prawn. The word no isn't in their vocabulary or seen as unimportant. This brings in modern feminists again being obsessed with women's sexual liberation being turned into some sort of fantasy. I wanted to bring this up so that I could mention snails, and the use of snail media can completely warp one's perspective. When you're Aro-Ace or simply uninterested in snails, you feel like you're trapped in a world where romance and snails are valued and exploited above all else. And if you don't like it, you're outcasted or made fun of. Or worse. So when people say you just need to find the right guy, it has a little bit of malice in it, whether intended or not. The infantilization of asexual people or people simply uninterested in snails can make them do things that they don't want to do. Asexuals are highly vulnerable to SA. Studies show that aromantic asexual people are more likely to experience depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and suicide thoughts. Maybe I can blurb that. This has nothing to do with their lack of snails and romance. A lot of people think that Aro-Ace people are that way because they're depressed or have a bodily misfunction, and vice versa. Asexuality is a sexual orientation, and aromanticism is a romantic orientation. This does not mean that they don't experience libido, arousal, or a snail drive. Their body works fine. Would you say that a straight person's body is broken because they don't experience attraction to the same sex? No, you wouldn't. It doesn't mean that they're broken. They're just different. And I know that there are some asexual people who don't experience libido or sexual desire, and that's perfectly valid. I don't want to get into how I identify because I don't know y'all like that. I like to assume that mental health issues when it comes to Aro-Ace people are due to stigma about how you're treated. You're surrounded by snails and romance all the time, and it's alienating. Then people infantilize you for it. Your self-esteem can falter a lot. For me, coming out as Aro-Ace has been incredible. It boosted my self-esteem, I feel better about myself and where I'm at in life, but I'm just one person. And it's still been really hard, and it's still hard sometimes, but I'm happy with my identity. Aro-Ace people, while not openly oppressed the same way other queer people are, it's a silent, slightly social oppression. We're seen as less than human, or we're completely against human nature. We're confused or going through a phase. We're prudes or aren't capable of any human emotion at all, or that we're damaging to the LGBTQ plus cause, like a Klingon ignored by our own community. And there's people that think we shouldn't be a part of them at all, that the A stands for ally. An ace-phobic hate crime can be defined the same way other hate crimes can be. If someone commits a crime against you because you're asexual or aromantic, that is a hate crime. Because being asexual isn't super obvious to people, stuff like this happens mostly in closed quarters, often in attempts to fix someone's asexuality, as I mentioned previously. I have an article linked in the description that kind of talks about this a little bit more. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on here just because, one, it's on YouTube, and two, it's kind of an uncomfortable topic, and I know a lot of people might not want to. I'll still kind of talk about it, so that's obviously why I had the timestamps there. This is somehow up for debate. My identity and being in a community that is supposed to be accepting is a debate. People have to write articles and YouTube videos explaining us just so that we can be accepted. And some people think that if we have to advocate ourselves so much, we shouldn't be there. Member of the LGBTQ plus community should be obvious. We're privileged because we pass as straight, and the government doesn't obviously infringe on our rights. Society will accept you because you can pretend to be part of its objective norm. If that's the case, then bisexual and pansexual people wouldn't be part of it either. Or even Lulu lesbians. I'm not even sure if I'm making sense. And a lot of you are probably gone. I'm just really tired and frustrated, and being Aro-Ace is a large part of who I am, and I am proud of it. But I want Aro-Ace spaces. I want to be welcomed. But there's a wall set between the LGBTQ community and Aro-Aces. A wall of stigma, a wall of discrimination. Someone on Quora, I know it's not the best source, makes a lot of good points, and I want to read what they've said. I have two people actually. So the question was, do aromantic asexuals agree that we should not be included in the LGBT community simply because we're not attracted to anyone as opposed to them? Asexual and aromantic, and I'd like to point out the issues within the last few years where the acronym was expanded to LGBTQIA. This was posted about 6 years ago. I also like to point out the following issue where people attempt to insist that the A stood for allies, while asexual and aromantic demographics said that it stood for them. Out of the two, heterosexual and cisgender allies can hide that they're allies to the LGBTQIA community without losing much or any quality of life, and often do not have to hide that they are allies unless they live in a heavily restricted country or family. Asexuals and aromantics, however, do face bigotry and violence, including violence such as battery and corrective SA at increasing rates. Nor can we hide our status as aromantic or asexuals, let alone both, without losing some quality of life. Examples being that I get extremely annoyed with people blabbering at me about how attractive the person across the waiting room is, and the disbelieving eyebrows when I say I'm not sexually active. I find it annoying and more than a bit bigoted that I can't fill out paperwork that requires sexuality to be filled out. I find it outright insulting when people insist that I tell them or fill out the last time I had snails. I find the accusations that I'm broken or that I must be a victim of childhood SA or other sexual crimes to be infuriating and a waste of my time and theirs that could be used to helping actual victims. I find it demeaning, insulting, and condescending when people tell me that I'm too young to know that, or I'll change my mind when I'm older, that I just need to try it with the right person, or that I must be in denial of my sexuality. The quote continues, and in all the asexual people I've spoken to that don't feel safe enough to date because they've been essayed by a supposed romantic partner, either through coercion or force, and the aromantic people that have been forced into relationships by family and circumstances, and while I can't speak for the entire asexual and aromantic demographics, I can say on behalf of myself and those I have spoken to, is that oppressed and endangered enough for you? I have a second quote here. I think it is an utterly disgusting display of hypocrisy and tribalism at its worst. Tribalism? What I don't understand is how we can all agree that TERFs are transphobic, biphobia and bisexual razor are wrong, and queer people can be in straight relationships. But all of a sudden, when it comes to asexuals, then it's up for debate. People say that asexuals aren't oppressed because they aren't infringed on by the government and they can pass as straight, while therefore being privileged. For one, being LGBT isn't a measure on how bad you have it, it's for people who are not straight. 2. Having your identity erased is in no way privilege. It means society will conditionally accept you as long as you live out a facade. And with that same logic, bisexuals and pansexuals aren't oppressed because they can pass as straight, similar to what I said. Third, it delegitimizes the struggle of being asexual, all because one doesn't notice what they go through. Asexuals are often delegitimized for not following social norms, such as snails in marriage, and people think there's something abnormal about us. Hell, asexuality essentially used to be considered a psychological illness. Worst case scenario, they can be targets of homophobic violence and corrective essay because some people think that we are gay people that are making excuses for not wanting to marry or have snails. You want to know the saddest part? They are using the same rhetoric of queerphobes. They use their ignorance and tribalism to further marginalize asexuals and to only benefit themselves. If they get called out on it, they will show the same fragility and defensiveness many queerphobes have. While admittedly, asexual exclusionism is a minority view, it is a vocal one, and it needs to be addressed or else it could become worse. We're seen as loveless robots just because we don't love the way they love. This is the end of the triggering content, so welcome to the people that skipped to here. I think that Aro-Ace people, at least for me, experience friendships at a higher level than allosexual or alloromantic people do. We love deeply and fully, and just not like that. I have friends that I love dearly that someone could potentially think that I was interested in them. I'm not. I just care about them and love them, and there are no boundaries in that way. And we don't separate love on levels as just friends or more than friends. All relationships have equal value, and I think a lot of alloromantic and allosexual people don't see it that way. When I talk about my friends, usually about my male friends to my other male friends, the friend zone is always brought up. And I didn't really understand the concept of the friend zone. Why would I not want my friend to be my friend, you know? There are people who are more important to me than other people, which is the case for literally everyone. I do anything for them because I love them, and I simply don't want to date them or have snails with them. It doesn't mean my soul or body is broken. It simply means that I love them as a friend. Friendships are extremely important for Aro-Ace people. When their friend is in a romantic relationship, there's often this weird shift, and it feels off, like I have to walk on eggshells around them. This could be getting into the territory of my autism, and I didn't want to bring this up because I don't want people to assume that autistic people are Aro-Ace or vice versa. This is just me personally. I'm sure a lot are, but don't use this to further your autism stereotypes. It feels really weird, like you've lost a part of your friend. It doesn't help when you get friendship jealousy. It's just kind of hard knowing that the most important person to you you'll never be the most important person to them because you'll always be second to their romantic relationship or romantic relationship they might have. It depends. I think we should start talking about a lovely term that Aro-Aces used often, squishes. Squish is a term to describe a friendship crush. You see someone and you have a very strong desire to be friends with them. Sure, you can find that person physically attractive. Find people physically attractive or objectively attractive, like a pretty flower you want to keep in a vase. And it's one that you like more than the other flowers. Or a pretty butterfly you want to keep in a jar. Maybe not that one. Any crush that isn't romantic or sexual in nature. It's not the same thing as wanting to be friends with someone, and the desire is a little bit different. It feels much more intense. A queer platonic relationship, or a QPR, is also a term used quite a lot in the Aro-Ace community. There's a lot to this, and I'm not very good at relaying information back out. This is the wrong hobby to have. But I want to quote the wiki page here. A queer platonic relationship, or QPR, or queer platonic relationships, QPP, is an umbrella expression to indicate that a relationship defies the divide between romantic partnership and just friends. Term I hate, goodness. It can be characterized by a strong bond, affect, and emotional commitment not regarded by those involved as something beyond a friendship. It's platonic and it doesn't have any aspects of romance and snails, but there's more commitment than a usual friendship. You can also have more than one queer platonic partner, and being in a QPR is not exclusive to Aro-Aces, but it's fairly common amongst us. Here's another quote here. Some of the social norms for friendship in some cultures dictate that friendships are emotionally shallow compared to romance, are fleeting, short-term, or non-committed, and do not involve partnership ties. Social norms for romantic relationships dictate that romantic relationships will always be more important than friendships. that romantic partners should move in together and coordinate their lives together as a monogamous pair, and that only romantic partners should adopt, raise children, or even engage in certain forms of affection, such as kissing or hand-holding. There is an amatonormativity involved here, the idea that romance is a universal goal. I know Tara Mooney did an incredible video on that. People in QPRs can be affectionate with each other, sleeping in the same bed, kissing, hand-holding, cuddling, that sort of thing, but it doesn't have the same underlining connotations it might have in a romantic or sexual relationship. And I will leave a link to the fandom page in the description as well. When I see people online during Pride Month saying love is love and all love is valid, I hope we can include platonic love. Aromantic asexuals are not broken. We're not missing a piece of the puzzle. We are not less than human. We are not robots. We don't need fixing or convincing. We are whole on our own. We love deeply and strongly. Our love is not stopped by barriers and hierarchies. Our love is just love. When I say I love you, it means the same as if I said it to another person I love. When I say you're attractive or you're beautiful, I mean just that. I don't expect anything from you, and I'm not hinting at anything. It's just simple. You don't need your other half. You don't need a partnership or a relationship. You are whole on your own. All of us are. And those mad, threatening us with loneliness, we're immune. I am immune to your mortal burdens of snails and intimacy. I am simply built different. You'll regret this once you're 30 and alone. I won't. If I were to regret something, it would be forcing myself to do something that makes me physically ill just to be accepted and seen as valuable. But even then, it still wouldn't be enough. Because I'm a person, you're a person, and one of us will always have an opinion on how the other should live. Focus on yourself, and be kind and accepting of people. It's the easiest thing you can do. If you would be unhappy with a lifestyle like this, then don't live it. If you think people are finding excuses to be oppressed or victims, I also don't really care. I know how things are, that Aro-Ace people are experiencing discrimination, and someone else saying that we don't isn't going to change facts. I'm just hoping for more understanding so that one day those facts are ancient history. Which side will you be on? Thank you guys for watching today's video. It means a lot that you would take time out of your day to watch it, and hopefully I did not ruin your day. I'm officially done with school for the summer, so I'll be uploading more regularly unless I get sucked into the vortex that is my retail job. One day, guys, I'm gonna make out of this, I swear. I will transcend my mortal form. Stay tuned. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of 2024, so feel free to subscribe if you want. I know it's tacky to ask, but I just need everyone to be aware of my goal, and if I reach it, I'll never ask ever again. Thank you again, and I wish you guys many lovely days ahead. Bye!